Reports that the Senate also adopted a motion on the alarming rate of buildings collapse in Nigeria.
The whole senators approved clause by clause the corporate manslaughter bill designed to serve public interest by ensuring that organizations exercise reasonable care in the way they manage their activities in order to prevent loss of lives that may arise therefrom. Consequently, an organization that is guilty of the offense is liable on conviction to a fine of not less than 1 million naira, while an individual goes for 3 years imprisonment with an option of 500,000 naira fine. Meanwhile, a motion on the alarming rate of building collapse in Nigeria, sponsored by Senator Abdulmumin Hassan from Jigawa State, has been adopted by the Senate, mandating its Committee on Lands and Housing to organize a sensitization hearing on the menace.
Statistics had indicated that in the last 2 years alone, most major cities in Nigeria witnessed not less than 3 to 4 building collapse incidences. This is the right time to act in order to save lives and property of Nigerians.
It is not just the loss of lives, it's the loss of business, the loss of relationship, the respect for the country, the integrity of the nation is at stake.
Materials being produced for building construction in Nigeria must meet the standards of international good practices.
We should return to professionals signing what they have seen and attested to as professionals.
Apart from observing a minute's silence in honor of the building collapse victims in Nigeria, the Senate urged the federal and state governments as well as regulatory agencies to keep alive their responsibilities in ensuring strict compliance with building rules and regulations.
And where we have building collapse, those involved need to be punished. And of course, the professionals involved need to either lose their licenses or suspended from practice.
The Senate also adopted a report of the Joint Committees on Health and Agriculture on the Nigeria Public Health Bill 2014, aimed at developing a comprehensive plan to provide for a coordinated as well as appropriate response in the event of public health emergencies. Also adopted was the report of the Committee on Agriculture on the Animal Health Technologies Registration Board Bill 2014. It seeks to regulate animal health and husbandry practice across the country in order to ensure transparency and excellence in service delivery. In the meantime, the Senate Committee on Defense and Army, led by Senator George Sikebo, has ended another round of meeting with the service chiefs, led by the Chief of Defense Staff, where critical security issues, including the cash for arms scandal, were discussed.
We have started the investigation. When we get through with the investigation, we'll brief you. The money belongs to the Nigerian government, yes.
In Abuja, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
Now, for Nigeria to achieve her aspiration of becoming one of the most developed nations in the world by 2020, there is need to strike a balance between national, intellectual and human resources. Correspondent Base Taima reports that this was the thrust of the National Retreats on Ethics, Transparency and Fraud Prevention for Public and Private Institutions held in Abuja.
Transforming public and private institutions through credible and ethical conduct of officers, experts say, is key to achieving a nation that is devoid of corruption and fraud. The need to address these issues in line with the Transformation Agenda and Vision 2020 necessitated this retreat by Center for Economic and Leadership Transformation.
The problem of this country is that some people are not actually doing what they are supposed to do. And that is why we now bring up this retreat for public and private sectors so that we can chart way forward to entrench the culture of truth, transparency, and credibility in our spheres of influence.
The Special Advisor to the President on Ethics and Values, Dr. Sarah Jibril, addressed the forum.
What is this business of ethics? What is the relevance of ethics? We say ethics is simply about good character. But the essence of our sitting today touches on the role and the responsibilities of the various institutions that humanize us, that will teach us about the essence of character.
While some participants insisted that government must be accountable to the people, others were of the opinion that the citizens also have a duty to live up to their civic responsibility.
I expect that our attitude to the public should change. Our manners should change. We should be self-disciplined such that we will be able to reduce corruption in the Nigerian society.
They generally agreed that doing the right thing at the right time by all Nigerians will go a long way to transforming the nation.
The United Nations has pledged its commitment to the protection of citizens through the human rights institutions in West Africa. The representative of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in West Africa, Andrea Ore, stated this in Abuja while on a visit to the National Human Rights Commission in Nigeria. Muplangda Kok has more.
Human rights situation in Nigeria improved with the advent of democracy, but recently activities of insurgents, especially in the northeastern part of the country, have violated the rights of many people to life and peace. The representative of the United Nations High Commission to West Africa, Mr. Andrea Ore, is on a visit to Nigeria to offer assistance on ways of tackling human rights activities.
And we really encourage and call upon the Nigerian state and governments to protect the Nigerian citizens and provide the security they deserve.
The president of Human Rights Institutions in West Africa and executive secretary of the National Human Rights Commission, Bem Angwe, urged the international community to bring the proliferation of arms to an end.
It is important for the UN Human Rights Office to come to Nigeria to verify the situation for themselves than to believe some of these stories that they are hearing, or to just rely on the reports that they are getting over there in Geneva or in the regional office there in Dakar.
The United Nations representative also met with civil society groups in Nigeria to determine the level of human rights violation in the country and profile solutions. Moplang Dakok, NTA News.
We now have the video package of the situation report at the UN General Assembly. Fighting the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, ISIS, through international coalition will be the major debate at the 69th session of the United Nations. Joy Osiago has our situation report on the security at the United Nations arena as world leaders gather to deliberate on this and other issues.
These are the sights and sounds around the United Nations headquarters in New York as world leaders gather for the 6th. These are the sights and sounds around the United Nations headquarters in New York as world leaders gather for the 69th General Assembly. A peaceful protest is against terrorism across the globe. And security is stringent around the United Nations complex in some parts of Manhattan, given the wave of terror. The United States President Barack Obama is focusing on a wide international coalition to fight the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. Subsequent sideline meetings with world leaders may lead to specific commitments to the war against terrorism through financial, military, and humanitarian support. At the Security Council meeting, President Obama will attempt to pass a resolution to commit countries to prosecute citizens who go to the Middle East to fight for the Islamic State. This is coming barely a day after the United States and a coalition of Arab nations launched airstrikes in Syria to counter the Islamic State militant group. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon opened a series of meetings with the climate summit heralding the General Assembly debate. From the United Nations headquarters in New York, Joy Osiago, NTA News.
You are tuned to news on NTA International, Abuja, Nigeria. Still ahead, Senior Citizens Advocacy Network of Nigeria raises consciousness on the plight of the elderly. When we return.
Nigeria, we the people decree that the power of evil secrecy shall fail.
All Nigerians should understand that a divided Nigeria can only mean catastrophic consequences for the entire black race.
We all African countries count on you and you're our beacon of hope.
That when Nigeria sneezes, all of us will catch cold.
All of us who look to Nigeria for lessons and inspiration never cease to thank God for this wonderful gift to Africa.
Nigeria enjoys the respect, the admiration, the friendship, and the hope of an entire continent.
The powerhouse of Africa.
Nigeria.
Unite and build Nigeria.
God bless Nigeria. Nigeria.
A message from protectors of Nigerian posterity.
Now, aging is a natural phenomenon that affects all living things. In the past, elderly people were treated with love and care, but today the times seem to have changed. This forms the basis of a one-day symposium by the Senior Citizens Advocacy Network of Nigeria to chart a course for support and empowerment of elderly persons. Fatima Aliyu has details.
In traditional society, old persons are esteemed because of the important roles they play by integrating society, preserving cultural values, settling disputes, and educating the young. Today, the old persons have lost their esteem and lack status because of modernization, industrialization, changing lifestyles, and the privileges of other persons.
Old people belong to vulnerable group. Definitely, they have contributed greatly for the development of this country.
The vast majority of older persons who, without fear of contradiction based on empirical findings, are near destitute in Nigeria.
Just queuing, elderly people queuing in the bank, or standing in the bus, or even the way they design the houses they live is a problem because at a particular age you can't even climb a step.
There is need to give priority through legislation to empower other persons, incorporating them into policy process and ensuring that their voices are heard. A right-based approach will help to correct the negative perception and the image of old age, a period of decline, inadequacy, and dependence. Nigeria has no policy on older persons. To address this negation, a symposium by the Senior Citizen Advocacy Network of Nigeria has therefore recommended the establishment of a National Council for Older Persons Affairs.
To join the rest of the International Committee in ensuring that we make appropriate provisions for our senior citizens.
What we are doing now is to canvass for the right of older persons to demand those privileges as of rights. It is
like others in the other parts of the world are enjoying, we also need to enjoy some of these privileges.
That will serve as a national advisory coordinating mechanism to make other persons active citizens.
so as they age, they are expected to age gracefully, and it is expected that the government, for which they have made so much contribution, should aid them to age gracefully.
There is therefore the need for continuous advocacy to ensure that efforts are intensified and effective mechanisms put in place to cater for the needs of the older persons in the country. Fatima Ali, NTA News.
Nigerian government sets modalities in place to increase gas flaring fine. Plus, banks raised 340 billion naira through capital markets in 8 months. Details of these and more with Ade Ao on Business News.
Fines paid by oil companies on fled gas are to be reviewed, and the committee working on this project is to submit its report next month. The committee is to compute an appropriate regime of fines that will compel companies to comply with government's decision to establish zero gas flaring in all oil-producing fields. Current fine levels, pegged at $3.50 per 1,000 standard cubic feet gas flared, have been easy to evade. From this window alone, Department of Petroleum Resources reveals that Nigeria loses nearly $1.8 billion annually. Meanwhile, in the first 7 months of this year, Nigerian banks raised an amount equal to the entire total sum raised in 2013. A report on the sector for September 2014, which stated this, explained that the increase in capital was not done mainly to boost the bank's financial base and comply with the regulatory requirements. The report predicts that more banks are likely to raise capital in the coming year as a result of the new capital requirement rules, which are likely to come on stream soon. The report further explained that, apart from the pressure, several banks felt uncomfortable about the safety gap which existed between their capital adequacy ratios and the requirement minimum ratio of 15% stipulated by the central bank for institutions classified as international banks. Despite the pressure on earnings, the macroeconomic environment remains supportive.
Sea capital will enable them to have access to long-term, funds, be able to expand the business. As you are aware, coming from 2004-2006 during the banking consolidation exercise, we witnessed how the banks were able to increase their balance sheet size, and today, or shortly afterwards, then you can start seeing Nigerian banks among the 100 banks in the world. The balance sheet size increased. We can now do mega businesses. Our MDs of these banks can even sit down with, MD of other corporations, the World Bank, and go on the table to discuss, international business syndication. Before then, it was not possible. So I think the economy is better off for it.
Ede Agu, NTA News.
Before we end the news, let's take a look at the weather situation in major cities across Nigeria and the globe in this forecast. And that's it on the news. Thank you for watching. I'm Nancy Godiangonihu. Bye for now.